Listen up.
Welcome to the PowerShell Podcast, the podcast for PowerShell and the PowerShell community. And now, here's your host, Andrew Plaw.
Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the PowerShell Podcast, your weekly podcast for everything PowerShell. I'm your host, Andrew Plaw, at Andrew Plaw Tech on socials, and we have a very special episode taking place today. A speaker from PowerShell Wednesdays, which is every single Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can join us live, be there, or check out the recordings later. But Emanuel Palm, welcome to the PowerShell Podcast. You're a Microsoft MVP, a very cloudy guy. You love authentication, you love PowerShell, and you actually teach other people about it as well. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here. Good to see you again.
Yeah, we've kind of become friends, I think, since PS Conference EU. That's where we first met each other. And then I discovered you've kind of been doing this for quite a while now.
Yeah, time flies. Seems like I have at this point.
I was looking at your LinkedIn, and we'll get into some stuff, but I saw you were like a printer manager. Like, did you work with printers?
Oh yeah, I worked with a bunch of like client stuff, and I learned PowerShell when I was working in like a support first line, second line kind of thing. And then I moved on to managing devices and clients, and somehow I started figuring out like SNMP stuff of the network, getting MAC addresses of printers through PowerShell, and did a bunch of like installation, uninstallation of printers, automation stuff. And happened to be semi-responsible for like 6,000 printers at hospitals in Stockholm.
Wow.
It was a fun time. People don't like printers, but I enjoyed the automation part of it, not so much the devices that I luckily didn't have to touch so much.
Yeah, so it sounds like you learned PowerShell before that role. Probably would have been harder to learn it during that role, maybe, because it's...
I think it wasn't very PowerShell-y. It was more me using PowerShell for whatever job I had, you know. But I definitely learned PowerShell from having to automate stuff, or choosing to automate stuff, I should say.
So you were getting into PowerShell maybe like 2016-ish, 2015-ish?
Yeah, 2016 is a good estimate. Yeah. I studied up until 2015. So I studied game design and programming, and had some, I think C# was my ended up being my language of choice. So when I found PowerShell, after having to deal with like bash scripts and stuff, I found myself familiar with .NET, and that's kind of where I started using it.
Oh, nice. So you had kind of a background where it probably a little bit easier for things to click in with PowerShell and get running really quick.
Yeah.
Huh. That is a pretty good time to get into PowerShell too. So like in school, you were doing C# stuff. Did you hear about PowerShell at that time at all? Or
No, I didn't. I had no idea if it even existed. Like someone showed me like, this is on your Windows machine. I'm like, what is this? PowerShell? It's like CMD but blue. Is that it? Like people initially think, but like we all know at this point, it's so much more.
Yeah, definitely. So you've gone through your PowerShell journey. You found value in it. You got to the point where you were able to start applying it for maybe some less than traditional use cases for PowerShell, things outside of just get process, stop process, right? You're kind of dealing with printers. And then now, like what happened? Now you're in the cloud? Like we went from printers to the cloud?
We're all going to the cloud, aren't we? No, just joking. I think cloud has its uses, and being like on-premise or whatever people want to call it also has its uses. Like there are good aspects to both. But yeah, I moved on from the devices role into cloud. I was curious about stuff like Azure Functions, automation. Cloud is obviously exciting technology in general, but I didn't know anything about Azure more than, it's a wide platform. And at that point, I think it had close to 200 services. I'm sure it's much more now. So I had the opportunity to move on to a role in consultancy, where I learned Azure and was focused on automation using PowerShell a lot whenever possible.
And is that the same job you're still doing? Same consultant role, or have you moved around consultancy?
No, not the same. I work with some of the same people. We have our own small company now. We're just 8 people now since starting early last year, and it's a real joy to work with these great people. We have 3 of us are MVPs, so we're very like Microsoft Azure expert focused on just that technology.
Nice. Yeah, it helps to work with people who have seen the light in the same kind of way, like really embrace PowerShell, automation, all the kind of best practices. It's got to be fun to go from printers to kind of working in that environment.
Yeah, I barely remember anything about printers at this point. It's all cloud infrastructure as code, DevOps, supply chain security, everything that touches code in one way or another in Azure. I probably have a hand in it somewhere.
I have a lot of questions, but let's ask this one. You were a game developer, programmer kind of guy. Imagine what that would look like. Switch to an IT role, start learning PowerShell, start implementing it. Now fast forward where you kind of have those core IT, skills, and you can manage kind of the next level where there's all these moving pieces. How do you feel about the challenge of the kind of work you do now compared to maybe your expectation when you were thinking about like what your career would look like? Because I imagine it's kind of fun with like the skills, kind of what you've built up a little bit.
That's a great question. I wasn't sure where I was going after studying because it was really hard to get a job in game development. Everyone gives 110%. It's kind of underpaid and everyone wants to work in it. So it was tough getting out of school without any like proper project published or on the CV. So I ended up eventually moving on to applying for some like IT support entry-level junior positions and got to move from there. But I think having like the programmer background and understanding that APIs are a thing, you can integrate with things, you can figure out how to automate things whenever there's the opportunity. I think that helps a lot in just the approach of like your take on processes whenever you get a problem ahead of you or in front of you.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, another kind of similar thing is like we've talked about your career progression, learned PowerShell, kind of grew those technical skills, you're confident and competent in a lot of things. But what about the community side of things? Because some people go through their careers, they get great jobs like you have, and that's kind of one side of things. But to do talks as you're going along for like years in a row and blogs, like why did you start doing that side of things?
Yeah. Much thanks to a great friend and coworker called Simon Wolin, also Microsoft MVP, great person. So when I was in the support role, there was or is semi-active a PowerShell user group in Sweden or in Stockholm called PowerShell User Group Sweden, where in 2017, I want to say, we had like a couple of user meetups that I started joining. And it was really fun, like connecting with the community. I think it was some other of my then coworker that suggested, like, you found this because we were already kind of going to the device user groups, looking at, SSEM, config manager these days, I guess. Back then, just started being a bit of Intune, I suppose. And at one of those PowerShell user groups, I decided to present like a small script that I made to choose lunch for me and my coworkers. So instead of choosing or discussing like where to eat every day for 10 minutes before finally deciding, I was like, you could automate this. So I started writing like a get random, of all my options of the nearby places. And then I figured I could do this better. So I found an API key for Google, and I listed all the places within like 2 kilometers that were open on that day based on the address. And then I sent an email through our like SMTP server or something to all the coworkers with like a poly thing to choose where to eat. Terrible thing to automate because no one will ever decide on the same thing, but it was a lot of fun. So I suppose that was the main part of it. And I presented that at the user group, and Simon thought it was really fun. So he kind of said, you should blog about this. And so I did. I had like an old blog from school that I like removed all the old posts and decided to reinvent. Then eventually I remade it in Hugo and hosted it in Azure. And that was my first kind of Azure project. And that's where that took part, I suppose.
So there's probably some people out there listening, this whole blog thing and share what you've learned. And even if it's just a simple, cool thing, like share. And like this lunch thing isn't, restructuring your whole org, anything. No. It's just a cool PowerShell use case. And I'm always trying to tell people that just share where you are. So the people out there who haven't blogged, who haven't given a talk yet, maybe they're thinking about it. What advice would you give to them kind of fresh off this experience of you talking about your first time ever doing that?
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be great. It doesn't have to be, pretty. You can throw it up there and someone is going to get a new perspective on a problem, even if someone else has already written about the problem. So even like you might think that, I Google about my problem, I found it on another blog, so someone has already solved the issue. Why would I blog about it? But you always have something to bring to the community, and by writing about it, you always get like a better understanding yourself as well. I blogged much for my own understanding and like learning, forcing myself to learn something enough to explain it to someone. So it's valuable in multiple aspects.
Yeah, I think especially it seems more and more these days that there's so much information that we can consume, whether it be written or video form or audio, that actually getting a good flow of really cementing concepts that you learn through teaching others or writing a blog or whatever it is, like that's going to pay off in spades when it comes to your career and learning things, and maybe a little bit less relearning the same things 10 times throughout a 5-year period kind of thing, which I know I've been guilty of many times, where it's like, I'll learn it, solve something, move on, not really document it, come back, relearn it again.
Yeah, I've ended up on my own blog posts multiple times, and it's a lot of fun realizing you had and solved and forgot this problem before.
Yep. And that's everyone can look to get an easy one like that, where you help yourself. That's enough of a reason to do it. You learn it better, all this great stuff. But also there's this chance you could help others, or you could potentially be good at it or find it works well for you. And you don't really have to change much of your flow. And all of a sudden you're able to, start a career off of it, earn trust at future employers, create opportunity for yourself. And it all started with just sharing kind of things you're already doing on a blog.
From a career practice perspective, I think it's a great thing to be able to show your employer or future employers that you are active and you know stuff. That stuff will carry between jobs no matter what.
Absolutely. And there's some people that have a hard time doing a full thing if there's not a reason to do said project. Yeah. When you have a blog post, it helps you to actually finish these things through a little bit, because you don't want your blog post to end 3/4 of the way. You want to finish the project. Yeah. For me, that's kind of one of the helpful things as well, because otherwise I'll just dabble for 5 minutes, get a little bit less excited, kind of move on.
Yeah. And one final tip on the blog post is to don't publish a draft. Like whenever you're done with it, don't wait to publish it. Just like push the release button and get it out there. You can tweak it later if you really want to, but otherwise it's just going to stay in the kind of outbox.
Yeah, we are not looking for perfect.
No.
You're allowed to have mistakes. You're allowed to not be perfect. And that's part of the two-way street. Like you're sharing something that you've learned, but also if someone out there really knows PowerShell, they love seeing new bloggers and they see an issue and that can help you. It's a great, I've had many scripts where I've like posted a blog about it. And then, oh crap, there's an edge case that I didn't think of that this person thought of for me and added in the comments. And all of a sudden I don't have to write that code.
Yeah.
I really try and emphasize that to people, because the more opportunities you can, I think of it like casting a net. The bigger the net you can cast, the more great things can come from it. Whether it's friends, like you find someone else who's dealing with the same annoying tech thing, or jobs, or just good vibes. There's so much good stuff to be had there by putting yourself out there.
Yeah. The first time someone reached out to me and was like, I read your blog. I was like, people read my blog? That's awesome. It solved someone's issue. That's just like an extra bonus. It's amazing.
And there's always people who don't reach out. So, it's always this.
I never do.
You never know who you're helping. Right?
Yeah.
I know I've read blogs before and they've helped me and I didn't respond at all. I just kind of enjoyed my day.
Exactly. Moved on with the next problem.
Yeah. No, it's cool to see that in all aspects of kind of this PowerShell-y world that people are being encouraged to do that. Like I've never been to the Swedish PowerShell user group, but it sounds like you all are also kind of embodying that. Push yourself, share what you've learned, because it really is crucial. We don't only want to hear from experts. We want to hear from people at every step of the journey, because there's probably a lot more people who aren't experts than there are.
Yep. And I think if I now write a blog post, I might even have lost some of the perspective I had as a beginner. So writing a blog post now and writing a blog post, 7 years ago, would look completely different, because I would assume a lot of things now that I might not have known back then.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm sure it's been fun for some of your blog readers to kind of grow alongside you, see the content kind of change, and maybe their content, their work doing at work has kind of changed alongside. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Start blogging. All right, just do something.
Yeah. And I should pick it up again, because mine has been inactive for too long.
I
there's always something. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about PowerShell Conference Europe, because what were you doing at PowerShell Conference this year? You were working, you were giving some talks. What were you presenting about?
I was talking about GitHub apps and using them in GitHub Actions to kind of automate anything, I guess, across GitHub in a way that lets you extend GitHub or integrate with other things. You can use apps to not require your own kind of access tokens that you might put in a pipeline otherwise. So doing external or cross GitHub automation, I guess. And I used it to demonstrate like a quick cross repository flow where one issue created in one of the repos gets posted to the other one without using any type of personal access tokens or stuff. So that's a super quick example, obviously, but you can do this however you want.
Yeah. Basically, the way I like to think of like CI/CD, the GitHub Actions stuff, it is just so like, say you have a different environment, you have PowerShell code that runs automatically on your infrastructure. It's kind of just like that, except it automatically runs on your code. You can, configure the conditions that actually trigger certain things, but that's where you can execute things, make magic happen, interact with GitHub, interact with artifacts, all kinds of things. But it's just, they call it a CI/CD, constant or continual integration, continual deployment. It's just stuff's always happening. Things are going in and out.
Yeah. In the kind of simplest term, it's a task scheduler, but it can trigger from everything from like a recurrence or cron job, as you might be familiar with, to various events across GitHub or even API calls from external services.
Yeah, super helpful stuff. It can, build your help for you if you're just kind of thinking of just in a PowerShell sense. Build your help. It can run your tests, do a whole bunch of stuff for you, and it's kind of like not as complicated as it sounds. Like it kind of sounds like, whoa, I'm gonna have to be a GitHub expert. But in actuality, it's kind of like you just modify one file that defines the GitHub action, and you can find other people who've done things and borrow a lot of the stuff. Like in your presentation you gave, there's a lot of code you can just kind of borrow, copy, paste, and all of a sudden you have access to this stuff. Or there's pre-built steps as well. Yeah.
You can copy or steal from someone endlessly and just get started with it. It's really quick to get started, and it's extremely flexible and powerful. So I encourage everyone using or considering using GitHub to have a look, because it's really nice, especially when we're authoring like PowerShell scripts or modules to get, you can run like PS script analyzer rules, you can run pester tests, you can publish your module to the gallery automatically whenever you are ready with a new release, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's powerful. And if you're at the point where it's like, it's not your first time hearing about CI/CD, but you still haven't done it, start doing it. And if you've never heard of CI/CD, just know it's not actually that complicated. Yeah, there's a lot of steps, but you can break them down, and it makes sense once you've kind of actually read through the files and see how it works.
Yeah.
But they're accessible skills. You just got to spend a little bit of time.
I'm sometimes like reluctant to spend a little bit of time when starting a project to build up the pipelines, because I know it's like it doesn't feel like it's paying off now, but like a few months down, you're so happy that you did it, because whenever you're done with like some PowerShell changes, you just press like git commit push, and when it's up there in GitHub, it runs all the pipelines. You know immediately that your module is working because the pester tests are passing. It's already on the gallery, and you have a new release. So it's like really effortless in execution once you built it up.
Yeah, and it makes the contributors feel more confident contributing, because they know there's some testing, and it just makes the whole experience better for every reason.
Yeah, if you have any type of open source project, consider building some pipelines for it. Because if I come as like an external collaborator wanting to submit a change, then I think it's awesome if I know there are pester tests, because then I know what I have to fulfill in terms of logic. Like, what is the behavior of the module? Did I break something with my change? It's green. I know I didn't break anything. And then you can build stuff like you expect certain markdown files to be in place so that they will generate documentation. You expect new tests. Like, you can do these like meta levels of testing, right? Where you have pester tests to ensure that all of your parts of the module are tested. So like, if you add a new command, you can have a pester test saying that there needs to be a test for that command. So you can loop that as much as you need, and it's really fun.
Yeah, it really is like the tool set for you to automate. And if there's anything you ever run into, you want to make sure you don't run into it again. Boom, GitHub Actions. It's just it's your go-to for that. It's kind of funny to me to think how someone can go from being a computer technician, just kind of like, oh, cool, PowerShell can help me, to then learning PowerShell, discovering GitHub, GitHub Actions, all these really powerful technologies that if you are not learning PowerShell, why the heck would you ever run into these if you're just a regular kind of sysadmin type?
Yeah, and even if you're not working with GitHub, you might be working with GitLab, you might be working with like Bitbucket, you might be working with TeamCity or JFrog stuff, you might be working with Azure DevOps. Like, all of it is kind of the same. So once you learn one flavor, you can easily transition to the other ones in your next job or your next project.
Yeah, or even just in conversation. Like, this stuff is pretty cool technology. So being able to follow along when it's discussed, or even, provide your own opinion as someone who's kind of written your own GitHub Actions for your personal module.
Yeah.
It's important stuff. So it's fun time to live where we are, where there's so many places to execute code, like to be helpful for what you're trying to do.
It's almost overwhelming in where you want to put your code to run, because you have everything from like Cloudflare runners to GitHub Actions to schedule tasks, things, scripts on VMs on premise. Yeah, it's everywhere.
But that's kind of where I really have fun with PowerShell, is when I'm duct taping things like that. Where I'm
it really is a glue language.
It's so much fun. It feels like, because when you're doing that, you're making something possible that wasn't beforehand. Not saying you couldn't do it with other solutions, but when you're kind of duct taping and creating these novel ways of tying the export from your internal service through an Azure function and include it in your official reporting, or whatever kind of weird, you can do anything though. And you can do that just by knowing PowerShell and some of these other technologies that leverage PowerShell.
I remember I used to think it was kind of magic to find APIs for things in general when I was starting using PowerShell. Because I can interact with this thing from code. That's crazy. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that API thing, because then you'll realize, like what I realized, I'd always see curl commands and everything. I never really learned curl, but I knew it did some internet stuff.
Yeah.
But as you go through, you realize, holy crap, so many programming things are built around APIs. And now you can plug into that. And it's really not that confusing once you go through the beginning parts, and what you can accomplish, what you can duct tape together is exponentially increased in webhooks. And there's all kinds of cool ways that you can get things going. And that's where it's like, I really feel like I'm a kid playing with toys when I'm building these solutions and moving things around and to get it to work. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Really feels like you can do anything as long as there's an API for it. And tie all these like unrelated parts together with PowerShell it's a joy.
Imagine a well-documented API too, where it's like, authentication is covered. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think we got to talk about that, because
authentication.
The REST API thing. It starts off easy. Maybe you got like some basic authentication or some kind of thing, base 64 or whatever. There's some easier ways to do it. But then, and I think now it's way more common, OAuth. But OAuth authentication can be its own challenge, because it's not very straightforward.
No.
At all.
OAuth is it's the standard for kind of authentication these days to APIs. Like, I want to prove that I am allowed to call this API for the resources that I want to poke. And to do that, I need to do this like OAuth dance, right? To follow one of the multiple flows available, either like interactive through my browser, log in with my account and get a token back to my app, Or for like automation scenarios, it's not interactive, right? So I need to figure out which flow fits that scenario. Do I have a password? Do I have a certificate? Do I have like a pipeline identity, something like that? And I think figuring out all that stuff when you're new to kind of automation and PowerShell, it's like one heavy extra layer of security and confusion. But everyone has to get there, and I think it's really interesting. Like once you get past the early stages of just understanding what the heck is going on, then I think it's a really fascinating and interesting subject in terms of security. So that's also something I've been diving into in the recent years.
I think it's interesting. It provides an opportunity because it is kind of challenging. Like there is that barrier. If you are the one on your team who pushes through that barrier and has some understanding and has played with it and authenticated many times, well, the asset you become for your team is a lot more, because whether it's you or someone else on your team, I can almost guarantee you that OAuth is going to be coming across at some point or the other.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a good solution, how are you going to automate things?
Yeah. Even just doing like simple stuff against Intune or your devices or your servers, whenever you're working with Azure or some other REST API, it's always the hurdle to get through, to get the token to begin with, and then understanding how to use that to call the API. Once you're past that, and that becomes like this understanding that you don't have to use the like Azure module, you don't have to have the Azure ACCLI available. You can call stuff and just get the token. Then if you understand how that works, it's really powerful, even conceptually, even though you don't necessarily do it from scratch. Just understanding of it really helps, because then you can figure out why that like error message is so red.
There's a lot of those. Yeah. I mean, I know I've been guilty. See red error text, stop. Too confusing. Yeah. But yeah, I think the thing is with any kind of protocol, if you're not giving it to it the right way, you're going to get an error message. So sometimes it's about understanding the protocol more or just finagling a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But you know about this stuff. Does AZAuth have anything to do with OAuth?
Does AZAuth? Yeah, mentioning my module there. So I have written in my journey from becoming, or from before I actually knew anything about OAuth, I was struggling with these like concepts. I wanted to call APIs, I wanted to do cool things with PowerShell, and I had no idea how to do the first OAuth dance. I didn't know how to get a token. I didn't know what tool to use for it. Like, can I do it with PowerShell? But then suddenly I needed a secret. I didn't know what applications were. All these things that are just like steps on the way before you understand the ecosystem. So I decided to understand this initially so that I could use it in my daily work, so I could explain it to people. Once I understood it decently enough, I blogged about it, and then I submitted a couple of sessions to PowerShell Conference Europe about it, and I talked about it. And somewhere along those lines, I decided to write a module for it in PowerShell, because I wanted something really lightweight, partly for my own like debugging purposes, for just getting a token, like that one step that allows for the magic to happen. And I wanted that to be really modular. I didn't want to need the whole like AC accounts module and all that ecosystem of modules, because I didn't want the dependence on another module, partly because of the like versioning out of my control. Sometimes stuff break between the versions, and although Microsoft and the Azure team are doing like amazing work, I wanted something that I could put in my own modules that use Azure authentication to just be available and just get the token. Because if I have a module to work against Azure DevOps, for example, there's a great module called AZAuth. It's like Azure DevOps was taken with AZAuth. So AZAuth is a module for working against Azure DevOps. And that one actually depends on AZAuth internally. So whenever you run like connect AZAuth, you just get the token with AZAuth. And same thing with multiple other modules that I have and have worked semi-close with. It's just a module for modules at this point.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great point. It really is. I think I installed AZ. You get like Is it thousands or they're like 180 or something?
The amount of modules or commands?
Modules,
Yeah,
commands. Commands is hundreds.
thousands. And part of it is auto-generated, isn't it, from the APIs as well? So it's whenever they release a new API, there's a new kind of, maybe not a new module, but definitely some new commands.
Yeah, I think it's I think they have a new name for it, but like the Swagger or Open API
is
might
it
be what
auto
they call it.
rest? I don't remember.
Auto rest. Yeah. So like based on the definition, it auto generates PowerShell, and I think a bunch of other languages too.
Yep, I think the graph module does the same, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, which is why a lot of times whenever I hear anybody really down and dirty in graph or anything like that, they're not going to use the wrapper module. They'll just find out the API endpoint and call it directly.
Yep.
Just kind of simplify it.
And I do the same every time, because you don't want the layers of logic between your command and whatever is happening on the other end, because you don't know what's going on there. Like, there may be some magic, there may be some version mismatch, there may be some stuff you want to do that is just released in the API that won't be in the module for a while. So, and also for your own understanding, I find it more easy to just work with the APIs directly.
Yeah, which I think is, I'm trying to think, I always think about the beginner learning process of PowerShell, and I'm thinking, that kind of once you get past the basics, you can pipe some commands together, maybe saved a couple PS1s. I think it's time to start dabbling, or at least exposing yourself to those other use cases like REST APIs. Yeah. It sounds like the ceiling on the usability of REST APIs is really high. Like, you're going to be using this for the long foreseeable future to be interacting with things. So
is there a ceiling? I don't know.
Doesn't seem like it, because any product you use, whether it's PowerShell or some native thing that ties things together, like having a strong understanding of REST APIs outside of PowerShell is going to serve you quite well, or just APIs in general, but REST is super common.
Whenever you want to transition or need to transition to another technology, or like even using what's those tools for like testing REST APIs?
Like Postman.
Yeah, Postman, for example. Like, even being forced, quotations, to use something like Postman, it will just give you an understanding of REST APIs. Even if you have to change tool, change technology, change language, running it in Python, like, if you figure out how to post a REST call in Python, it's the same. You'll do the same.
Yep. I think that your approach is the same one I kind of went for. It's like you find a use case and then you actually write the module for it. So you really get a chance to poke at it and figure it out and wrap it up nice. And then you actually have learned it.
Yeah.
But you really have to kind of poke at this, because it feels abstract a little bit till you get a good understanding.
Yeah. And I definitely figured out and like blogged and talked about it for a person who was me 2 years earlier. Like, I wanted to do it for the people who understood it just as little as I had. And I think that's valuable, not just for yourself, but also for other people who might learn.
1,000,000%. It's good. You should go about your career in that way, where you try and share what you've learned to help out you 2 years ago. And a lot of great things can come from that, but it's just such a proper way to go about approaching these challenges, I should say.
Yeah.
But I got a question about your history with PowerShell modules and C# with Justin Grody. Apparently, the worlds collide. But first, because I know this is a good story, you teased me with it. But first, a word from our sponsors.
This is the PowerShell Podcast.
Most of you know the PowerShell Podcast is sponsored and made possible by PDQ. I've had questions from listeners asking, what's PDQ and what do you do? Well, we help IT teams automate endpoint management. PDQ Connect is our cloud-based tool for real-time software deployment, patching, scripting, remote access, and vulnerability management. It's fast, flexible, and built for people who just want things to work. If you want to see it in action, head to pdq.com/podcast and check out our interactive demo. No signups, no emails, no credit card, just a fast and easy way to explore how it works. That's pdq.com/podcast. Automated endpoint management that doesn't slow you down.
Now, back to the PowerShell Podcast.
So what happened with this? You gave a talk with Justin Grody on C# module development. How did this all transpire? Are you guys best friends?
Very quickly. It's the short answer. No. So I think me and Justin met. Did we meet beforehand? I'm not sure. Maybe we met like at one PSConf in, I want to say, was it 22? Do you remember what year?
I think it was 2022.
22 was definitely my first PSConf. I think 23 was maybe when I talked with Justin. Let me see. Let me just Google quickly here. This is 2 years ago, so it's going to be 23. Yeah. So 22 was my first PowerShell conference Europe. I had the talk. I had a couple of talks then, but I didn't talk about authentication because that was tricky business back then. But I met Justin just briefly. We talked a little bit about his. He had just started using, I think, Cloudflare runners, which is something that I think he still uses for his module fast, the kind of CI/CD friendly way to install modules really quickly, which is also a PowerShell module. And the year after, I think there was like a then Twitter thread that someone said like, yeah, just submitted my or thinking about submitting maybe this and this session to PSConf EU. And I was like responding like, yeah, I'd like to talk about, or maybe I said I submitted about like writing PowerShell modules in C#, which is something I'd been doing then, not only for AZAuth. I think maybe it was initially AZAuth, but also some other stuff. And Justin was like, hey, you want a co-speaker on that? And we'd maybe talk for 20 minutes in total ever. I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. So he, living on the west coast of the US, makes it quite the time difference in Sweden. I think it was, I want to say 9 hours. I'm not sure.
Wow.
So it's like either I get up, really early and we do it before he gets to bed, or we do it really late my time, just after work for him or something. And we ended up, I think I got up at like 6 a.m. maybe 5:30. I want to say we had like a check-in every 2 weeks. We did like the proper way of doing it, which was we started really early. So just after New Year's, when we got like PowerShell conference is Europe is in June every year. So we started just after being accepted with that session in, I want to say, late January, early February maybe. And we did like a check-in, just like a half an hour call once every week or 2 weeks. And then we did some like asynchronous work between those times, and we scraped together a very demo heavy 90-minute deep dive into, I think it was a follow along session actually. So people had the opportunity in the room to follow along with all the demos that we did and showcase like 5, maybe 6 different ways to write PowerShell modules. Everything from normal PowerShell script to doing a hybrid module, to doing a C# full module, doing different library versions, different framework targeting, even doing like a F# PowerShell module. And I think by the end, I think Justin even managed to scrape together a module that was built in VB.NET, which should be illegal.
Wow.
And yeah, on that journey, yeah.
I gotta ask,
fun time.
Like, so C#, you did it before you started your career. Fast forward, you learned PowerShell, did a whole bunch of other things in your career, and now you're using C# again. Did you forget everything, or did you remember a couple things?
I feel like I learned more C# in recent years than I did when studying, but that was also as one of my early programming languages. I started with ActionScript for Flash, like Flash videos, Flash programming, the old games.
Yeah.
I did that in like high school a little bit as a hobby thing during some of the media lessons. And then
Computer lab.
Yeah, exactly. Then I did some C++ when I started studying, and that was way, way different, from ActionScript. You had pointers, you had memory locations, you had like a bunch of complex stuff. So when I found C#, it was like, oh, it's C++, but easy. So that was perfect. that's also why I got to love PowerShell. So when I got to figure out that I could do more powerful PowerShell through C#, I kind of fell back into it. Did some like GUI things with, I want to say WinForms, but it's the one after. What's it called?
WPF?
Yeah, WPF. I did some stuff with that, both in PowerShell and C#, because you can do some PowerShell stuff. You just can't do it multi-threaded so well because of run spaces and that complexity. But that stuff is really fun, and I've found my love for C# again. So I started running more C# for PowerShell, and it's really performant. You can do some crazy things and wrap, SDKs that aren't so friendly to wrap in PowerShell, but for PowerShell, and you can make them super quick. It's a really good thing for the toolbox for sure.
Nice. You gotta have it. I got some quick questions. You ready?
Shoot.
What's your favorite GitHub action?
That's a tricky one. I am fond of the built-in ones, honestly, which is a boring answer. Like uploading, downloading artifacts just makes it so easy to integrate parts of a workflow. I don't have a particular action in mind because I would say most of my custom logic or integrations, I either write my own composite action and write most of the logic in PowerShell in that action for reusability within my repos, or I just run like in pipeline PowerShell for most of the API calls or such. So yeah, not the best answer, maybe.
Have you seen a coffee machine with REST API?
A coffee machine with a REST API? No, but
I'm
I've heard
just
of
thinking
them.
of some use cases.
I've heard of them, yeah. I didn't. I don't think I mentioned this, but I roast my own coffee as well. Yeah.
Oh.
We can blame it on Yap, I think. You know Yap?
I know Yap.
Yeah. The community might know Yap as well.
Yes.
Yap, big coffee nerd, introduced me, or we have a small coffee nerd group in PSConf EU these days. So we do a coffee exchange every year since 3 years back, I think. And on this journey, I also nerded into coffee and started my own coffee roastery as a hobby thing. So I built my own website in Hugo, some PowerShell glue between Apple script and generating labels. Yeah.
We got to get a link for the show notes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's called Arcanum with a K. Only ships in Sweden, but arcanum.coffee. It's a lot of fun as a hobby.
I didn't even know that. I should have done better research. Gosh.
No?
Wow. So you did like a good coffee. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you get a machine that is API controllable on successful release of AZAuth, you could have it make you a cup.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
But
trigger on some GitHub Actions.
The thing in the States, I think you could even order a pizza. I think a lot of these, like Domino's has an API where you could probably use your secret to get a pizza. That's
a good idea.
All right, next question. What's your favorite PowerShell module? There's a lot of them out there. You can only pick one.
Can I only pick one?
Yeah, well, you can go 2, 3. I don't care.
The rules are very flexible. Yeah, I want to say AZAuth. We talked about it, but it's my own module, so it seems like cheating. But it's something I use very, very frequently for getting tokens. Just like I want to test an API, I want to test something in a pipeline. I need the token as a managed identity. I have a use case where I need some type of Azure API integration. Then I use AZAuth because it's lightweight and it's built for that purpose. But I must say Pester. Jakob and the community, of course, is doing fantastic work, has done for a long time fantastic work on that module. And it's so powerful having that domain-specific language within PowerShell, understanding and writing Pester tests. Together with, we've talked about GitHub Actions and CI/CD. It's such a powerful tool to know that I don't need to test my own module. I don't have to whenever there's a change, I don't have to test my 14 commands to know that I didn't break anything, especially when refactoring or changing some central logic. I don't have to have these enormous test demo files where I go through all of the scenarios, and I've automated that once and then it runs the tests. And that's so satisfying.
That's huge. If we didn't have Pester, we would have to have something else. Because every language needs a solution like Pester. Otherwise, gosh, you're in a bad state. Good answer. If PowerShell disappeared tomorrow, what would you fall back on?
C#.
C#, yeah.
Yeah, I've almost fallen back from it to C# already. It's still I'm torn between them. Like, they have their own use cases, obviously. If I'm automating something in Azure, I'm doing it in PowerShell. But if I'm building something robust, performant, and something with like a GUI or multi-thread, it's C#.
Smart. Is that C# in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code?
Visual Studio Code since like a year or two back, actually. I think the C# DevTools, what's it called, DevKit extension, apart from the initial kind of licensing drama that was going on, it's really good. It's really good now. And I know some people still like Visual Studio. I moved off it around that time, I think, when the C# DevKit came out, maybe 2 years ago, I'm not sure. And I just love VS Code, VS Code for all development. It's nice to have the same IDE, the same environment for whatever I'm working in. And although Visual Studio is great,
I totally agree about VS Code. It's just, there's some people who are listening who still haven't maybe used it or adopted it. They're still in the ISE or just looking at, I don't know, Notepad++ maybe. But it is such a helpful tool if you're dealing with anything. You deal with JSON files. I don't know how you can not use files outside of PowerShell that VS Code could help you with formatting. It's just like the same tool you can use for everything. C#, PowerShell, all that stuff. Azure stuff, there's a really rich ecosystem of plugins or extensions.
Extensions,
yeah. Like tons. And it's not actually that hard. I think a lot of the guests I've talked to have written plugins in TypeScript.
Yeah, I think it's especially with Copilot. We haven't talked about AI, but especially with having something like GitHub Copilot available to guide you through those projects, it's not as daunting of a task anymore to write your own extension, even though they are TypeScript.
Yeah, that's one aspect of AI I'm interested for, because I know how to code in one language. Like, I should be able to prompt it and be able to sort of understand enough to cobble together something in other languages. I'm sure there's exceptions if it was something like COBOL or C++. I'd have to take a little bit of a course, get a little refresher before diving in. But maybe Python, PowerShell, modern languages, TypeScript.
Yeah, those languages, especially Python, front-end languages, JavaScript, TypeScript, it's really, really good. And even in PowerShell, it wasn't so sharp in the beginning, no pun intended. But I like these days, it's pretty good. Sometimes it thinks there's a command called something that doesn't exist, but overall the logic that even running pester tests, it can do a lot of the generating that you can tweak yourself afterwards and just verify that it works the way you wanted.
Yeah, I find that smaller prompts, I usually have better results than hey, give me this whole huge thing.
Yeah, build me a web app that does this. It's better to be okay, I want this to look like this and behave like this in this way using this type of logic.
Kind of prod it a little bit first. Great advice. And, it's been a fantastic episode. We've had a few chats, but it was nice to get to know you behind the scenes. We do these every single Monday. Every single Monday is a new episode of the PowerShell Podcast. Every single Wednesday, there's a new PowerShell Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me. But we're not done here, man. We're not done. People enjoyed you. You shared a lot. We connected with your perspective. We saw your journey from somebody who is brand new to now you're crushing it. Where can we find you on the World Wide Web if we want to stay in touch, want to keep up with your projects? I'll have links to everything in the show notes, but just for people who are listening, where can we find you?
You can find me online at every social media platform thing. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on my own blog, pipe.how. I'm on GitHub, and most of the platforms like X, Blue Sky, I am. My tag is Palm Emanuel, so my name backwards, one word. And reach out if you want to discuss any of these things, or just PowerShell in general, or coffee for that matter.
Yeah, I did not know that. I have a feeling you might hear from some people who also love coffee and are like, what? Are you serious?
Hope so.
That'd be awesome. Well, thank you. We'll definitely be in touch and maybe see you on the podcast in the future. Certainly
you
see
so
you
much.
at PowerShell Conference Europe in the future as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thanks, man. And thank you, everybody out there. Walk safe, drive safe, do whatever you're doing safely. Keep learning PowerShell. Keep pushing yourself, growing with us. We're all in this together. And thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the PowerShell Podcast. The PowerShell Podcast is a PDQ production, making device management simple, secure, and pretty damn quick.